Can start event.
Both of us.
Oh, there we go. Yay! Wow. What a journey to get here today. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm Angela and I'm with KidCheck, and I'm here today with Ben Carroll. And Ben is actually the founder and director of a fantastic organization called Ground Operations Development, G.O.D. God. And so we are so excited to talk with him today because he's going to share with us some of his experience, and he has vast experience in helping ministries and lots of different organizations protect themselves in this day and age. So welcome, Ben. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for going through this technology journey with me today to get here. It's great to have you.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. So let's just kick this off with, give me the backstory on Ground Operations Development. How did this come about? I mean, I know a little bit of your history, but I think people would find it fascinating how you created this company.
Well, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and I'm a retired police officer with 7 years in law enforcement. And near the end of my career, God wanted me to do, and He presented us with opportunities to start training SWAT teams across the Southeast. So, a Christian friend, fellow SWAT team member, we formed the company Ground Operations Development, training SWAT teams. And shortly after that, we gave our tithe to a Christian orphanage here located in North Florida. It's supported by many of the churches, and they saw God was giving money to the orphanage, so they wanted to know who God was. And with that, they started asking us to help them with their church security teams. And so the background story is initially we told them no, because we thought we were a tactical training company, and wanted to do that very well, and we were being very successful at that. But about the third church within a week that asked us to help, we thought, well, hang on, this might be God leading us in a different direction. So we started praying about it, and God led us into helping churches. And my father, who is was a state trooper in Tennessee for about 17 years and a pastor for 45, actually helped us sit down and draft 20 plus policies that every church would need for just about any eventuality that happens within the church.
Wow, that's great. I had no idea that your father was a pastor as well as a state trooper. That's pretty amazing. Wow.
Yes. They used to hire him as the pastor, but often they couldn't pay enough to get our family there, so they'd also hire him as the local police chief. And so he would arrest you on Saturday night, and then he could lead you to the Lord on Sunday morning.
Oh, that's awesome. So when you worked with him on creating these 21 policies, was that based on his experience as a pastor and a trooper? Is that where those 21 policies came about? Is that where they came from?
Yes, they did. My background is high liability policy writing. I used to work with CSX Railroad Police. I was hired by them specially to build their emergency operations center here in Jacksonville that covers 22 states and 2 provinces in Canada. And I wrote all their high liability response plans, such as how to respond to a derailment, what happens if an employee is robbed, injured, hurt, or killed, all the different response plans we had there. And I left the railroad after writing those and became a police chief for a while. And then my wife got moved back to the Jacksonville area with her job. And so I moved back here and became the emergency management director of the Clay County Sheriff's Office, where I wrote all of their emergency response plans.
Wow. So you have a lot of experience in this then. This is not just...
I did my last 15 on their SWAT team as well.
Wow. So you train and develop SWAT teams across the country. And then your ministry really is helping churches develop their security teams, craft their policies. But let's talk a little bit about children's ministry. So in today's world, with all that you've seen and all that you know, what do you think are the top 3 threats and liabilities to children's ministry in today's world?
Well, the first one are the people that work in the ministry. We need to make sure we're screening them properly, making sure that we're not putting people who would be tempted to harm children or to do something with children they shouldn't. We need to screen them and make sure we're not putting them in our children's ministry in our church. There's a statistic that comes from a group that works with sexual predators in the prison system, and they say that 10% of the American population thinks about having sex with children. So imagine if you have 200 people in your church. There's 20 people there within your church that are thinking about or have thought about having sex with children. And we want to make sure that we're screening for those people and not allowing them into our children's ministry or our nursery ministries. It doesn't mean they'll ever act on those thoughts. It just means we don't want to place them in a place of temptation.
Absolutely. Now, out of the 21 policies that you've crafted, what do you think are the most important for children's ministries to sort of have at their disposal or use in their organizations?
Well, let me finish answering your last question real quick, if I could.
Okay.
You said the top 3 things. Top
Yes.
one was the screening the people. The second one is we need to be looking for those that are sexual predators that are coming to church. We know that 75% of all sexual predators attend church regularly. That's the people that have been convicted. And my brother-in-law was a sex crimes investigator in the Orlando area for many years. And he said they're extremely guilty individuals. People that molest children have an extreme burden of guilt on them. That's the millstone that the Lord talks about hanging around their neck. Well, when someone's guilty, what do? When someone feels guilty all the time, what do? They look for forgiveness. Well, what does the church offer? It's a perfect puzzle piece. The people looking for forgiveness show up in church looking for that forgiveness. And now we have predators coming to church regularly, and they're not going to tell you who they are. They're showing up. They're there every Sunday. They're tithing. And so what do? As people show up, we get to know them. We think we know them. We start letting them hold responsible positions within the church. So we have to be very careful that we're screening for those people as well. And then third of all is the accountability of the children. We see that if the church is responsible, so when a parent brings their child to us as the church, during that time, we have to make sure that we are watching that child, that we are taking care of them, that we're looking out for their best needs and taking care of them, because that's a big responsibility and liability for the church. But at the same time, we want the parents to be able to come and worship the Lord. So to do that, we need to make sure we have a really good children's program put together, not only from the time that we sign them in, but how we take care of them, the people that are working with them, and then making sure we get them back to the parents safely. And I have seen it in the past where a child has become lost within a church, and it's not a good thing to happen.
And when you say get lost within a church, what do you mean? Like get physically lost in the building, or just sort of?
The nursery actually lost count or lost track of where that child was. Oh. And the mother showed up to reclaim her child, and the nursery worker couldn't locate the child, and came back and asked the mom, "Are you sure that your husband didn't pick it up?" Well, that wasn't the right question to ask, because Dad was standing just outside the door, and she goes, "No, he's standing right here." So the nursery worker went back and checked a couple of more rooms and came back and said, "Well, is there someone else that could have picked your child up?" And the mom went from 0 to 200 in about 30 seconds about where's my child. Well, not only that, but 3 or 4 other moms had walked in, and now in their mind, their child's lost too, because if you can't find her child, where's mine? And so they went from 0 to 200 in just about 30 seconds, and that nursery worker was overwhelmed. It all turned out really good. We found the child, but we need to make sure that we have policies and programs in place that we're constantly accounting for these children while they're in our care of the church.
So let's talk a little bit about the second point that you made in terms of screening for predators. Can you expand on that just a little bit more? I know that oftentimes when we talk about screening for predators, we talk about what the elements that should be included. And for us as KidCheck, there's about 7 of them, which include the background check, and how deep that goes depending on if they're getting direct access to children or they're in ancillary positions somewhere out. And then you talk about, we talk about a written application and making sure that that's filled out, that has a verifiable social security number and things like that. When children's ministry directors are screening for predators, is there any information that you can give them that they should be doing to make sure that that's happening? Because obviously with the numbers that are coming out of the church, we see that there's a lot of abuse done within churches. So we're somewhere there's a gap. So what would you say to a children's ministry director in terms of specifically screening for predators? What should they be doing?
Well, first of all, I recommend screening from the pastor down, everyone. And with that, once we get to the director, the children's ministry director who's heading this up, we want them to have people of the church volunteer. But once they volunteered, we need to start the screening process. And a background check is just exposing the tip of the iceberg. It's
Correct.
saying we're going to screen for people that have already been arrested, apprehended, and convicted. Those are the only people showing up on that screen. But we still need to do that, and we need to do that regularly. But we've also come across another program called Diana Screen. Diana Screen is a test developed by psychologists who work in the prison system. It's about 80% effective. And through Diana Screen, it can identify those people who are having thoughts, who don't recognize the proper boundaries between adults and children. And then once we've screened them and we've found the ones that are not having this problem, we want to also have good, solid policy that says, okay, these are the proper responses. Do we initiate hugs with children? Things like that. If a child hugs us, can we hug them back? Should men be changing diapers and taking children to the restroom? In our policy, we say no, because we're eliminating a large portion of those that might be predators. But we also advocate that adults do not enter into the bathroom with the children. That, they go and check the bathroom, make sure it's clear, but then we let the child go in by themselves. If they need help, then 2 adults go in. That we never go adult-child into the restroom. We also advocate that we don't have adult and children going to the same restrooms because the children are vulnerable at this time. So we have a very, very detailed policy that addresses all of these issues and much more. And accountability, how to sign your children in. This is one thing the church has to be very careful with. Often if the church is using like a 3x5 card to sign their children in and take the information down, those cards rapidly go out of date with younger children because a child will go to the doctor this next week and will be diagnosed with a peanut butter allergy. Well, mom and dad come back to church, and if it's just a file card that's got their information, they just mark down that the child's there again, and they're never updated on that allergy. And next thing you know, they've given the child a peanut butter cookie as a snack. And now the child's in a medical crisis, and the worker doesn't know what's going on, but mom and dad are completely familiar. So there needs to be some type of electronic sign-in, and it has to prompt them each time, is there some type of new condition that we need to be made aware of? And if the church doesn't put that responsibility back on the parent, then the church assumes that responsibility. And the church doesn't need that liability in addition. That needs to be given to the parent. That way the parent feels comfortable with what information they will share with the church.
Interesting. That's great. Those tips are really helpful, and lots of good ways that people can step out today and do something that will help prevent, at least predators getting closer to children. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your favorite subject, church security teams. And I think the interesting thing of what we've seen is that children's ministry directors are realizing that their role is really changing in today's world. We have a statistic that we use here at KidCheck that says less than 1% of information shared at seminary revolves around protecting children. So we have new pastors stepping into roles, and they have no idea about the responsibility of protecting the children that they serve and what that entails or how they can do that. So oftentimes we talk about the importance of the church security team and how they're a fantastic resource for any children's ministry director. Now, talk to us a little bit about, in your own opinion, how children's ministry can utilize the security team within their church to help them better protect children.
Well, first of all, we advocate that the children's ministry, the nursery workers, we want them to train with the safety team on all 21 of those plans that we have, because they need to know what the response is of the security or safety team, as well as the ushers, the greeters, and the parking lot team. We want all of those people training together, including the nursery workers, so that everyone knows what the plan is in the event of crime or violence occurring within the church. Any safety problem. We always talk about the plan. So many people run out and try to get training on various topics. Active shooter is real popular right now. So everyone goes out and gets training with firearms. Well, the problem is now, say 25 people in your church go out and get this training, but there's no plan. So now I've added 25 additional problems right back into the church, because if someone pulls out a gun, we got 25 people trying to take a shot. So what we say is have a plan first. To go out and get training is to put the cart before the horse. So have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, you're planning to fail. That's what the plan is. We're going to fail at this. So let's get a good plan. Let's make sure it's a solid plan. Then let's go get training on the plan that goes directly with what we're going to do. Sorry.
That is okay.
I apologize. But, and it's probably going to ring again. I just had another pastor call, and that was another pastor calling. I apologize. I talk with about 20 to 25 pastors a week, and about their safety team programs. But it's very important that our children's ministry and our nursery workers are not only training the plan, but the policies that we give them, that they're training those policies, such as our evacuation plan. It's very important to know that when we evacuate, what are we doing? How are we doing it? Do we have the equipment in place to evacuate all the children at once? Because if that building is on fire and it's building with smoke, what are we going to? We're going to take a few children out now and then try to come back and get the others? Well, what are we going to do with the ones we just took out? We're just going to leave them out there by themselves? We need to be able to evacuate all the children at once in a unified plan, just like we see at schools. Same way with our emergency lockdown. Our workers need to know, what are the lockdown protocol? When are we going to do this? We're going to not only lock it down for an active shooter, but we're going to lock down the entire church if we have a missing child. And how are we going to engage the parents at this point in time? Because if we have an active shooter, the parents are instantly going to want to go back to the nursery and recover their children, even in the face of danger. And so we need to be able to show that from our church standpoint, that our children are already safe and you don't have to worry about them. We tell our pastors that our children, that's where we put all of our resources first. We want to make sure that regardless of what happens, our children are always safe. That way the parents can know they can evacuate to an area of safety because the children are safe. And that if we do evacuate those children, where do the parents come for reunification? And are we as a church capable of doing reunification? If we have 1,000 children in our nursery area, are we getting them back to the right children? So your systems have to be portable. You have to be able to pick up those child check-in systems and move outside to another location to be able to do that proper reunification.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, at KidCheck, we do secure children's check-in. So I completely agree with everything that you're saying, especially the mobility piece, because it really is important. And it's important that your team leaders in the classrooms are also empowered with information, such as live rosters and things like that, so that they can easily take a head count, and really look at who's with them, who's been evacuated. I totally agree. You're spot on with that. And, that's a whole different world than even existed a couple of years ago. I mean, we didn't really talk about mobility of information in children's ministry much back then. And so it really is a new way of looking at things. But
well, here's another thing to add to that, and that's a great comment, is it doesn't just happen during an emergency. It happens every time we take the children from the classroom to the playground. There's an accountability. I was asked this question just 2 weeks ago by a director of a church children's ministry. How do you recommend getting that child from the room out to the playground and then back again? And it all comes back down into having a mobile, portable accountability system that we know who we've got before we leave the room. We know who we've got when we arrive on the playground. And before we leave the playground, we recheck and make sure we've got the same amount of children and who they are. And then we recount when we get back into the classroom. We have to be very, very careful of when we move those children outside of the classroom. And all of them want to go to the playground to play.
Absolutely. So this is a little bit off topic, but I think it's important to mention when we are presenting at children's ministry conferences, a lot of times we hear from children's ministry directors that getting leadership support or leadership buy-off is really a challenge within their church. So they may have the greatest intentions of putting together a safety plan and policies and guidelines and things like that. But what they're finding is that they're having a really hard time getting top-down support for their efforts on protecting children. So I know you talk to a lot of pastors each week. Do you see that changing? Do you see pastors stepping up and wanting to support children's ministry directors with in regards to the safety issues? And if so, what would you tell a children's ministry director about gaining leadership support for safety efforts?
A pastor's worst nightmare, the worst nightmare he can have, is for the church to lose a child that has been entrusted to their custody or becomes injured. I'm going to tell you, that is the pastor's biggest concern. So I don't see them having trouble. I think it's the way you address it with the pastor. The pastor, all of this will lend to making sure that we never have a problem out of our nursery and children's ministry areas. Because every pastor I've ever talked to, that is super high on their priority list. They want to make sure that while that child is with us, that child doesn't become injured or lost and in any way. And so with that being said, the nursery director, really, it's going to be how do you approach the pastor? We say do the small things first. The things that you can affect with just a policy, that you can affect with just basic training. And as the pastor gains confidence in what you're doing through a proper policy and proper training and proper screening, then when it comes to the bigger things, the things that cost more money, the things that cost more church time and input, he's much more willing to go there. So start with the small things. We can help the churches with that. When we do assessments of the churches, we come in with a very detailed assessment software. We provide them with short-term, mid-term, and long-range goals. The short-term goals, they have no cost to them. It's all policy-driven. It's all in how we do the business of church. The next ones are small things, such as putting thumb twist deadbolts on certain doors so you can quickly lock them, but making sure that you don't violate fire code when you do that. So how do you lock down the children's ministry without violating fire code? There's a proper way to do that. All of these, and that has a very low cost. You know, putting in certain types of systems in place, putting a security checkpoint to make sure people that aren't supposed to be in the nursery aren't going back through the nursery. So many churches, the problem is they put nurseries on left and right side of the hallway, and everyone walks through the nursery. We have to get away from that practice. But until we can get there, we can put a security person on either side, making sure that people don't walk through there, they don't need to go. These are simple solutions, you know, that we can put in place until the big solutions can come around, such as check-in softwares and redesigning our nursery floor plans.
I like that. I like it with the starting really small and then building up as you gain momentum. And, that's a super great suggestion, because I think a lot of people need to hear that, because they feel like if they can't get the big stuff done right away, well, then, it's frustrating all the way around. So that's really great. We thank you for sharing your knowledge on that. My next question is about churches that are small or startup, and maybe they can't afford, they just don't have the budget for, whatever it might be. So tell us a little bit about, you already kind of mentioned on that or touched on that with your last response. But if we've got small or startup churches that are really wanting to prioritize child safety, is there anything in addition to starting with the small things that you would suggest to them? And how do they work with an organization like Ground Operations Development? I mean, you seem to have so much knowledge that I would anticipate that, maybe you don't work with really small churches, or maybe you do. I don't know. What are you,
We work with all size churches. We've got a church of 30 people. My church that I went to is 13,000 members now, but it started with 7. So every small church has the ability to be a mega church one day. And so you have to start from the very beginning as small churches. And that's when we work with all size churches. And that's the reason we tell them the policy in which you use has to be scalable, so that as your church grows, the policy can grow as well, so that you can do the same thing the large churches are doing with a scalable policy. You just don't do it as much of it until the need is there. So having those basic policies in place, the way we do the business of church shouldn't be different from one church to the next. We all follow the same safety rules. We like to call them filters. That way, when someone tries to get around that filter, they make themselves obvious. And this should prompt people in areas of responsibility to say, hang on, we don't do church that way. When you bring your child in, this is the way we do it. The next time we see someone, if it's the same person, trying to get around that filter again, that should really cause us some concern. And we should move forward with discussing why we're doing this way, and that we won't allow it to be done again. No more moving around filter. And so with that helps our security team, also our safety teams, helps our nursery workers and everyone else identify potential risks that walk in the door, regardless of how large we are. All of it. In small churches, we think we know everyone, and we judge everyone else on our own moral code. But unfortunately, we don't see the demons that haunt everyone else when they move back to their homes and they're sitting in front of their computers or whatever else it is where those demons come and haunt them. We need to make sure that we're not saying, oh, we know everyone. There's no one here that's going to harm the children. No, we put these filters in place now, and anyone trying to get around them, then regardless of how close we are to them, sorry, we don't do it that way. And if we see a continued response, then we understand that's a potential threat.
Yeah, I like that, empowering them to sort of identify threats before anything happens. I think it's great that you work to educate people on doing really their own risk assessment, on the day-to-day, rather than depending on these bigger systems to identify people. Because a lot of times the systems don't interact with people one-on-one, but these workers do. And so giving them that knowledge is really, really important. Oh, that's great. So go ahead.
I'll share with you one thing that we tell people, and that it's exactly what you're saying. If I lay out a bunch of stones in front of you and I tell you to show me the gold, and you've never seen gold in its raw form before, you're going to walk up and your response is going to be, is that gold? Is that gold? Is that gold? But if you're a gold miner, you're going to walk up and go, that's gold, that's gold, that's gold. So if you don't know what the threat looks like and you're in a position of responsibility, you're going to be going, is that a threat? Is that a threat? You think you'll recognize it when you see it, but that's not necessarily so. Someone needs to come in and share with you the plan, the policies, the filters. That way, when you see it, you understand what it is and you're going, that's a threat, that's a threat, that's a threat. Because these threats are trying to get away the practices that we put in place. So it's very important for people to understand what they're looking for before they ever see it. Because if they think they're going to be able to know what it is when they do see it, they're probably going to talk themselves out of it. And guys are the worst at it. We'll talk ourselves out of having heart attacks. We'll be having a heart attack. No, that's just the pizza.
Not today, yeah.
But if you educate me what a heart attack looks like, all of a sudden I'll go, hey, I'm having a heart attack. I need to go to the ER. So it's the same way in our nursery and in any of our ministries within our church. We need to understand what the threat looks like. And the only way I can educate you on that is to give you sound practices and policies to put in place, and then everyone knows what those are. Now, when we see the threat, we can readily react to that and react to it in the proper way without overreacting or underreacting.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much. And your program that you offer to churches within Ground Operations Development is called the Guardian Program, correct? And the Guardian Program is specifically geared towards churches of all sizes.
Yes.
Yes.
All sizes.
And how can people find out more information about God or Ground Operations Development? Is it checking out your website? I mean, how can they get more information from you? Because you guys seem to have a lot of good things to share.
Well, we would love for them to go to our website. Don't be misled by it, because we train SWAT teams, so you're going to see a lot of SWAT teams on the website. But go to www.groundoperations, plural, operations with an S, development.com, groundoperationsdevelopment.com, and you will see a tab there that will lead you towards our church security and guardian program. And follow that, and it will share very much with you. It'll tell you how to get in touch with us. You can also click on a link, and it'll send me an email, and I'll get right back in touch with you. Or one of our other team members will get back in touch with you. And we are growing, and we are expanding. We're in many states now across the United States. And we are capable of taking this from the East Coast to the West Coast. And we do have additional training that follows up after the program that they can also subscribe to. And we have monthly conference calls and monthly training programs that each one of our churches that are a member of the Guardian program participate in. This month, it's going to be a firearms program where we're all checking firearms, making sure we're following the policy properly, making sure we're all filling out our waivers and looking at our concealed weapons permits of the people who are on our safety teams that carry firearms.
Oh, that's fascinating. So they still get ongoing resources then once they if they use the Guardian program and they connect with you, they get ongoing training then monthly if they need it for their organization. Now, who attends the monthly conference calls? Is it mainly lead pastors, or is it children's ministry directors, or who's usually on those calls? Security team members, or a combination of everyone?
Yes, everybody. Yeah. Yes, we want them all. We want them to call in because we want them to tell us. We want them to ask us questions, the things they didn't understand when they were training. We want them to ask if they had problems. We want them to bring those problems up, because if they had that problem, another church probably had that problem or has had that problem and already solved it. There's great synergy there. We also want to hear about their success stories. We hear so many success stories over our conference calls. We had a gentleman in a state in the middle part of the country, I won't say where, get our policy and procedure on a Saturday, and the pastor handed it to his security team leader, and he opened it up, and it just happened to open up to the sexual predator map around their church that I provide them with. And he went, oh my goodness, look, there's a guy that lives right across the street. Well, right there on that map, we provide them a link to go to. He clicks on the link and he went, oh my goodness, this guy comes to church here. He had just gotten his policies, and he's looking at his tablet, and he goes, this guy comes to church here. I wonder where he's sitting. He looks right next to him. The guy's sitting right beside him, looking at him, look at his arrest history on his tablet. He was sitting right next to him. He said it scared him at first, and he put his tablet down because the guy was watching him, and now he knows. He said, but after a moment, he said he started going, you know what? That guy's here trying to slide in under the radar. And he said it made him angry. So he started looking at him real stern, and he realized he's wearing an ankle bracelet that's monitoring him. He can't go but so far away from his home without the police knowing about it. So that I showed up the next week to train them, and they go, "What do we do? This guy's here in our church." I said, "This is a divine appointment by God. Not only did God bring this guy to the church because he can't go anywhere else but to this church, but he provided you with the information on how to minister to him. Because within our policies, we do have a ministry plan for the sexual predator." And so God brought them together at just the right time so that they could share Jesus with this man who had a demon that's attacking him. And this man needed to find redemption, and he was only going to find it at this church. That's the reason God sent him there. So it was a great story to hear and share with everyone else on how God's using the Guardian program, which this is God's program. This isn't ours. Sure. He's using his program to help people, walk a life closer to the Lord, or he's finding them when they're under attack and bringing them back to the Lord. And one thing we like to say is our pastors understand so much. They understand that Jesus is the glue that bonds the broken back together again. And if we don't have our pastors there knowing how to minister to them, if we're not sharing who these people are and identifying them and bringing them to the pastor, then you know what? These people aren't going to get put back together. They're going to find their answers in the secular world, and it's usually going to be through mind-altering drugs and everything else, our prison systems. And you know what? Sometimes that works, but mostly Jesus is the one that's going to fix them.
And I think I really like what you're saying, because I think people's first response about having predators within the church is fear. They're very fearful. And once again, unless they're given the tools to understand how to minister to them, and then as you said, that it's really a divine appointment that they come in, that's really good information for people to hear, because I do think that the first response is always one of fear, and rather than looking to minister to them. So thank you, Ben, so much for sharing all of your thoughts and opinions today. And I'm sure those that get to watch this clip of our time together will be so grateful that you shared what you did. So once again, if you're interested in learning more about ground operations development, you can go to Ben's website, which is groundoperations.development.com, and learn more about the Guardian program. So Ben, thank you so much. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and we'll look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you. Same here.
All right.
Have a blessed day, everybody.
You too. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.